All right, I'm back. Part two of my anniversary Q&A. Um, I had to move to a different position because I've got to show you something. For the most part, I have not prepared for these answers, but I did glance at some, and so I have one thing prepared. But anyway, my next question was from the Rick and Dave Comic Book Hour. It's always bothered me. Their videos are never an hour long. But other than that, I love those guys, and they've just recently started making videos again. I think they started way back when I did, and then took a hiatus in the past year, maybe. So their question, well, it was a request, so I just took it as a question for my Q&A, but it might not have been. Rick said, show the Thor poster in the back. So in the back of my comic book room, I'm not in my comic book room right now, there's a Thor poster leaning against the wall, which used to be hung up in my old comic book room in my old house along with another poster of Thor, and I thought I'd show you them both. I really have done nothing to fix up my new comic book room yet, other than just claim it from my wife, claim my territory, so to speak, and set up my computer. But eventually I will be hanging up this poster of Thor, which is obviously a recreation of a very beat up comic book from the Silver Age, and now Galactus. I bought this at a comic book store, and it came wrapped up in this giant sheet of Mylar on a board, so I really like that. I wish all my posters were like that. Then I have this other poster of Thor, of the Lady Thor, which is hard to show you because it's harder. I always thought this was a really cool poster, and although at first I was not happy about when they announced they were turning Thor into a woman, I thought it turned out to be really cool and a great part of the Thor mythos. And then I have, Lady Thor just fell to the ground. Then I have another poster, which I hope to find a space to hang up for, which I'm really pleased with. It's been sitting rolled up for quite a while. And this is possibly my favorite comic book cover of all time. It's going to be impossible to show you. How do you flatten these things? Ooh, it's on really nice paper. I got this from a seller on eBay, but I think it was just a poster seller. So this one's called Cap Goes Wild. It is Captain America 106. Prime Jack Kirby from the Silver Age. So anyway, hopefully you'll see that better when it's hung up on the wall someday. So my next question is from Sarge Merica, who's been on YouTube for quite a while now. I think of him as a newcomer, but he's been here for a while now. And he says, you said no politics, but what's the best political statement or point you ever read in a comic? What was the most offensive or poorly argued? Well, I really do hate talking about politics. I don't normally think politically when I read comics, so even comics that may be political, I don't read them in a political way. Like, I guess the Flintstones comic is political, but I just view it as a spoof of modern society, and I don't worry too much about, which political points in it I agree with and which I don't. Is it spoofs on religion, which I find amusing but maybe don't completely agree with? Is that political? Is feminism political? I would say I had a negative reaction to, and I feel bad saying this, but to Bitch Planet. And I think the main reason is because I felt like it was angry politics first, story second, and that bothered me. I certainly want to listen to minorities, be they women or racial minorities, experiences and feelings and everything like that, but there was something about the tone of Bitch Planet. And I almost felt like the author of Bitch Planet was abusing her politics as a way to get a lot of hype and attention rather than really being serious about them. And I'm sure she doesn't feel that way, and I'm sure a lot of other people don't feel that way. But that was my reaction to that. Although I recently read the first issue of Prez by Joe Simon and Jerry Garadetti, or whatever his name is, the Bronze Age Prez, which only lasted for 4 issues. And that attempt at a spoof of machine politics, the party boss who decides who's going to be senator, who's going to be mayor, and all of that, like Daley in Chicago, was so ham-fisted that I found it offensive, in the sense that it was offensively stupid. I think it was trying to be more like Mad Magazine or something, which also felt odd in DC Comics, but it just didn't quite work. There are probably, my crude, simple level of politics, my favorite political critiques are in Gru, where there are greedy kings and things like that, people who love money too much and stuff. I am not very good at enjoying complex political stories. So, I feel like I shouldn't have said that about Bitch Planet. And I'll probably go back and read Bitch Planet at some point, but my initial reaction to it was of annoyance. And maybe the stories weren't good enough to get over my annoyance. Okay, Comic Book Estate, who is a great guy, who I finally saw his very pleasant face on a Don the Comic Book Junkie video, because he doesn't show his face, to my knowledge, in his videos, but always love his videos. And he says, congratulations on your 5 years. And then he asks some hard questions, and I prepped for one of these. I should have prepped for all of these. But he says, what's your all-time favorite superhero costume design? And the first thing that popped into mind was Jack Kirby's Hela, the goddess of death in Asgard in the Thor comics. And I just quickly, on another device, Googled up a picture of Hela to remind anybody. I just love her really cool costume. I'm sure that's the first person to pop to my mind. So yeah, whoops. My vote is for Hela. And he actually gives the answers to his questions. He says his is Mantis from 1970s Avengers. Interesting. Okay, I have to go back and look at Mantis. I seem to remember her having like a long loincloth type of thing hanging between her legs, and did she have little strands of hair coming up? Who are your top 10 favorite comic book writers in the past 5 years? Okay, so I'm going to be winging this, and that's going to be tricky, because memory is slippery. But let's see, Kurt Busiek, particularly for his Autumn Lands, and suddenly his name has slipped me. The writer Xander Cannon, who his writing in Kaiju Max I love, and Rick Remender has done some great stuff these past 5 years. Recently, I've really been appreciating Jody Houser, who does Faith, and Renee DeLiz. I loved her Legend of Wonder Woman, and it's a tragedy to me that she blew her relationship with DC and will not be doing a follow-up to that. So that's 5. I've got, let's see, who will be 6? Mark Waid for his amazing work on the Daredevil run. A lot of these are tied in with the art. It's hard for me to separate out artists. So like, I have not loved everything Mark Waid's done in the past 5 years, but I loved his Daredevil run. He did some other great stuff here and there, and some other stuff that was just sort of oh, this is hard to do off the top of my head. Other writers that I really liked. Okay, Brian Azzarello on his Wonder Woman run, but other stuff I've read by him recently hasn't been that great. But I loved his Wonder Woman run. Um, let's see who else has done great writing in the past 5. Well, Brian K. Vaughan, I've got to give it to him. Sometimes he frustrates me, but he's done a lot of great writing in the past 5 years. 2 more to go. 2 more to go. I'm having anxiety here. Maybe I'm sneaking a peek at his list there. I shouldn't be doing that. Yeah, who else? Ed Brubaker. He's been doing awesome work. My favorite work of his has been the 2 criminal specials he's done recently, but I love the Fade Out, and I'm really enjoying his current one, Kill or Be Killed. And did it just turn the video off? I don't know. Hopefully not. It just told me the battery was getting low. And I really loved, I'm enjoying his Kill or Be Killed. Fatale was very good. But he's teamed up with an artist that I love too. So I'm way behind on Velvet, which he also writes. So maybe that would count. So I need one more. And there's lots of them, and I'm going blank. But let's say John Arcudi's work on BPRD. Okay. Yeah, I don't know if John Arcudi really should be on my list of top 10 favorites. What's the best comic story arc you read in the last 5 years? Okay, my off the top of my head is Brian Azzarello's whole Wonder Woman run was really one arc in a way. I could try to figure out how it breaks down and which one is my favorite within it. But it was all one story, so I'm going to list that as my favorite arc. Could have been Kaiju Max also. Paulo Costa, who's I think he's from Portugal, but he might be from Brazil, says, have you ever felt that modern artists have a hard time or even a lack of interest in portraying movement and that it's a negative effect on storytelling? I think you're right. They do not focus on movement. They've almost rebelled against the old Marvel manner based on Jack Kirby and Steve Ditko of lots of movement and lots of kinetic movement from panel to panel. And you don't see that as much. I do think there are artists who do it, but there's not that much of a focus on it. There's more attention in a kind of beautifully posed picture. I think Chris Samney is a great example of someone who still cares a lot about movement. And I want to say Scotty Young does some great movement. I'll have to go back and look and see if I'm right about that. But yeah, there's a lot of artists that seem more static now, and I do think that's a big loss. Like, we've gained a lot of things, especially in coloring in recent years, but we've lost a lot in a bit too much of a rejection of that old comic book style. Jennifer Jenny Jen, who I'm gonna have to see if she has a channel. I'm not quite sure who she is, but she asked a great question. Do you think the monthly comic floppy can survive? I think it can, but I am very worried about it. It goes back to in my first video where I talked about I would like them to do more shorter arcs and such. The way things are done with very long stories and arcs being really just chapters in a longer story rather than complete stories in and of themselves, and very few one and dones. The motivation is to wait for trades, and that apparently is an economic problem for the comic book industry. So yeah, if they do more one and done, I think there's still great pleasures to be had in the floppies. I really love a well-packaged floppy, which you usually get from some of the indies. And, like there's these beautiful Valiant floppies. Some of the ones from Image are really awesome. The Grass Kings from Boom. But I do, and I think floppies kind of depend on comic book shops at this point. So they're tied, the health of floppies and the health of comic book shops is tied in together. And I think the health of comic book shops is tied into finding new audiences and not just continuing with the small niche group of aging readers like myself that they depend upon. Okay, I think I'm going to end the video here, and because I've got a lot of stuff going on in the house now. People came home from a night out much earlier than I expected, an afternoon out. So I'll have to do more of these Q&A videos later. Talk to y'all later.